Giannis Antetokounmpo is now officially an underrated basketball player in the NBA, and that might sound crazy coming out of my mouth because, you know, most people think that Giannis is the top guy in the NBA, top 5, top 3 player in the NBA. You're like, Crumbletakes. How on earth could he be underrated? How could he be underrated when he's a top 3, top 5 guy in the league? Well, there are certain reasons why I believe that this man is somewhat underrated in a way. I'm not saying that he's like super underrated. He's a sleeper player. People aren't talking about him. There are certain ways that I believe that Giannis is underrated and the media don't talk about anymore, and I feel like it needs to be brought up more because after the season that Giannis just had, he averaged 30 points on 60% field goal shooting, first ever player to ever do that in NBA history, and it's not talked about whatsoever because of a few certain reasons that I'm gonna go ahead and dive into. I just find that absolutely absurd, and I just feel like it needs to be talked about. So that's what I'm here on talk about in today's video. Like, subscribe, socials are in the description, comment how you guys feel about the video. Let's get straight into it. All right, to start off, we're gonna talk about when Giannis was obviously the #1 unanimous best player in the world. Let's say that was the year when he went ahead, won the chip, 2021. He was definitely the best player of that world at that time. He was a 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year award. He just came off winning an insane chip, having the best closeout game in NBA Finals history, no doubt. That game needs to be documented. This man had 50 points out of the team's total 105 points, so he basically scored half of the team's points. Went ahead and dropped 14 rebounds, 5 blocks. 5 blocks and 50 points is that just sounds ridiculous. And he also had 2 assists. But then he also went ahead and shot an efficient 26 for 25 from the floor. How bad of a free-throw shooter Giannis is, but in the closeout game, this man went ahead and shot 17 for 19 from the free-throw line, which is insane because we all know how bad of a free-throw shooter he is. I think he's around like 60% or something like that. So shooting 17 for 19 from the line in a game like this is just all around insane, and we got to give him big props. After this, he was known as the best player in the world. So after this, the Bucks come off a championship. They go into the next season. They're doing great. A lot of people are saying, well, the Bucks have a chance to go ahead and repeat. Giannis is playing out of his mind. His Bucks core is still doing really well. Bucks went ahead, placed third in the Eastern Conference that year with a record of 51-31. That year, Giannis was third in MVP voting. He went ahead and averaged 29 points, 11 rebounds. He shot 55% from the field. Another great season for Giannis, selected in the 6th All-Star game. The Bucks were looking great. They went ahead and pretty much steamrolled the Chicago Bulls in the first round. They did lose that one game, though. That one game that was kind of scary at the beginning. I was getting a little nervous as a Bucks fan, but they went ahead, beat the Chicago Bulls in 5, and then they would go on to play the Boston Celtics. The second most stressful series of my life as a Bucks fan. #1 being that Brooklyn series, but this is #2. When we won that game 5, that is my favorite Bucks playoff win ever, besides the game 6 of the finals, of course. Favorite playoff win ever. We go up 3-2, but here's the problem with that. Chris Middleton went ahead and got hurt in that Chicago series. We were up 3-2. Things are looking like there was a possible way to go ahead and close this series out. Giannis just went all around insane mode, best player in the world mode. His stats were absolutely absurd in this series. Man averaged 33 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists in 7 games. He all around dominated. Like, this is Giannis's best playoff performance series ever, in my opinion. He just all around destroyed the Boston Celtics. And it's kind of sad because, you know what, this was all for nothing because they went ahead, lost the game 6 and lost the game 7, which is really sad because in that game 6, Giannis went ahead and dropped 44 points, and the team like barely did anything besides him. I think Drew Holiday had bad stats. Everyone besides Giannis in that game 6 was all around garbage. I'll put up the graphic for, you know, the carry job, that one graphic on ESPN. I'll put it up right now. But yeah, that is what Giannis did. And then in game 7, he scored 25 points and 20 rebounds and 9 assists. He almost had a freaking 20-20 triple-double, but of course it wouldn't have even mattered because, you know, Grant Williams went insane. The box score, I'll put up the Bucks box score. It was all around disgusting. Everyone else couldn't shoot the ball whatsoever, so then they went ahead and lose. So you're like, okay, it's whatever. They weren't able to go back to back. That kind of hurts. You really want to go back to back when you have an opportunity to. It sucks that Chris Middleton went ahead and suffered an injury because with Chris Middleton, I fully believe the Milwaukee Bucks will win that series, but that's all right. Let's go into the next season. We still got the core. Drew Holiday, Middleton, Giannis made some moves. Let's see what happens. The Bucks go ahead first in the NBA, the best record all across the board. They have a 58-24 record. The regular season, they have an all-around amazing one. They go all around insane. Everyone balls out pretty much. Giannis goes absolutely insane, averages 31 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. He kills it once again. This time he's top 3 in MVP vote. Mention every time he's top in the MVP voting. The year before that, he was also top 3. He's the third guy in the vote. Of course, Jokic would go ahead and win. No, I lied. Embiid would go ahead and win MVP this year. So the Bucks go into the playoffs and they play a team that they're kind of familiar with, the Miami Heat. But Giannis would go ahead and suffer a back injury in the first game, and then the Bucks would go ahead and lose in 5 games to the Miami Heat. So they all around had a full breakdown. They fell apart. They went ahead and fired Mike Budenholzer, and a whole bunch of stuff happened. And this is where I really think Giannis's fall from grace in the media really started to happen. As you can see, Giannis is a 2-time two-time MVP, and honestly, he probably should have won one in that stretch where, of course, the last time he won MVP and up to this point, because what, top 3, top 4, he's just always up there in the votes. I feel like the media really started declining with him after this playoff loss right here. After this, you go ahead and lose to the 8th seed as the 1 seed of the best team in the Eastern Conference. There's going to be conversations about you, and of course, Giannis had the crash out interview, so there had to be some changes made to this Milwaukee Bucks team, because it, like, there started to be evidence right here that this Bucks team was not perfect and Giannis was not going to be able to carry it all the time. But in the offseason, they go ahead, bring in Adrian Griffin as their head coach, which at this point, it was kind of a big question, because it's like you bring in an assistant head coach from a guy that the people wanted in Milwaukee. A lot of people wanted Nick Nurse. I wanted to bring Nick Nurse in, but they go ahead, bring in Adrian Griffin. So I'm like, okay, we'll see what this man can do. And after last season, a lot of people are saying we got to do something. We got to make some kind of move. Drew Holiday, he needed to be moved at this point. Like in the playoffs, he was all around unbearable offensively. And then Mike Budenholzer too, not calling timeouts and not being good in situational problems. Both of them were both labeled as the problems in Milwaukee. Offensively was not good in those games without Giannis, and he was even not good with the games that Giannis played in. So at that point, the front office had a decision to make. They need to go ahead and do something. What did John Horst go ahead and do? Well, he did something that I didn't think was going to be possible, and they go ahead and pull off a trade for Damian Lillard. I didn't think it was going to be possible whatsoever. I was a huge guy after that game too. If you go look at a lot of the Bucks tweets after we lost, I actually crashed out on that game 5, and there's a lot of tweets of me saying we need to bring in Dame, and there's like a jersey Photoshop of him. It's really funny how I said that. And then a few months later, we go ahead and bring him in and somehow pull off a trade where we trade Drew Holiday and Grayson Allen essentially. And I think there was also some picks involved in that trade. I'll put the trade up on screen. We go ahead and retrieve Damian Lillard, one of the greatest point guards of all time in my opinion. And you know, he was on the NBA 75th anniversary team. So we move into the season, and you know, the Bucks season, it starts from a roller coaster as soon as the regular season starts, because this regular season was just all around up and down, up and down. It's so hard to even explain what type of season this season was for the Bucks, but I guess you could throw around the word that, you know, it wasn't a good season, because it wasn't. The chemistry with Adrian Griffin wasn't good whatsoever. We saw players just all around just looking discombobulated with some of Adrian Griffin's play calls. Just the players in general not really liking Adrian Griffin, and just the chemistry wasn't there, and the front office knew they had to do something. Even though the Bucks had like 30 wins and only like 14 losses, they still went ahead and fired him, because they knew in the future this was going to go ahead and backfire and things were going to be good. When you got chemistry issues with the coach and like every single player, you got to do something, because then something bad is really going to happen. Went ahead bringing Doc Rivers during the hardest road trip of the season. I think Doc even came out and said that he wanted to take the job after this road trip, because he knew becoming the new coach during this hardest road trip of the season, I think they played Phoenix and like all the West Coast teams at this time. He knew it was going to be hard and it wasn't going to be easy, and he didn't want to take the job until after that, which I honestly do not blame him, because the Bucks went ahead and lost a lot of those games. But then of course the Bucks would go ahead after the All-Star break, the defense would go ahead and improve. That was the biggest thing with Adrian Griffin. The defense was all around terrible. It seems like Damian Lillard wasn't the same player as he was. Of course he did have his great games, but something just looked wrong. He looked a little bit out of shape, and it's because mostly last season he didn't go ahead and work out because he knew a trade was going to happen, and he didn't want to go ahead and suffer an injury. Due to the fact of this, a lot of stuff were just wrong about this Milwaukee Bucks team. A lot of the chemistry issues, and the team looked old, it looked out of shape, and then of course they would go ahead and become what, the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference again, and then after that they would go ahead and lose in what, 6 games to the Indiana Pacers, which sucks, because that game 5, I'll never forget, that game 5 was all around special, man. And for the ones wondering how they lose to the Pacers so easily, well, back in April, the Giannis would go ahead and play a game versus the Boston Celtics, and they were already up like 20 on them, and he would go ahead and suffer a calf injury, essentially putting him out for the rest of the season at that point. And then through the playoffs, man, we had some more injuries. Damian Lillard went ahead and suffered another injury, and he missed some games in the playoffs. Chris Middleton was playing hurt. He actually got 2 surgeries done on each one of his ankles, which is also kind of concerning. Chris, man, we need you healthy, dog. You're one of the key parts to this team. When you average 30 points per game on 60% field goal shooting, and it's never been done in NBA history, no one has done that ever in NBA history besides Giannis last year. He was the first player ever to have that insane efficient season like he did, but averaging 30 points per game, which is all around ridiculous, not talked about whatsoever. I feel like that gets swept under the rug, and the biggest reason is because of the Bucks. You know, the team as a whole has just had some obscene mishaps and some insane tragic injuries happen to them recently. Like this year, the Bucks were bad, but I don't want to go ahead and say that, you know, a championship was like insanely out the window for them, because like I'm saying, Giannis was averaging 30 points per game on 60% field goal shooting. Who knows what he would have done versus that Indiana team, because he ate the Indiana Pacers all year. Here's his averages versus Indiana last season. When I went ahead and ate them, of course the Bucks didn't win a lot of those games, but I guarantee you in a playoff mentality, things would have changed. They also did go ahead and absolutely dominated the Boston Celtics in that one game on that one Wednesday. Switched to another game because the game was getting so bad. It was just outright out of control. The Celtics came out the half with their bench players in. They had enough of it. And I truly believe that we're at a point where Giannis Antetokounmpo is an underrated player in the NBA. Now, I'm going to make another video coming out in the next few days explaining the Bucks offseason moves, all that. It's going to be a whole nother video that's going to be coming out later this week. But I just wanted to make a video explaining why I think Giannis is underrated, because no one is talking about this. Giannis is what, a two-time MVP? Honestly, he should have more than 2 MVPs. I genuinely believe in these years where he's been voted 3rd, 4th, he should have won one, like in one of these years. Like the year that Embiid won, it either should have been him or it really should have been freaking Nikola Jokic. The year that the Bucks were the 1st seed, the best team in the Eastern Conference 2023, he didn't even really get in consideration for MVP whatsoever, which when you're the best team in the league, that's surprising, I'm not gonna lie, because of course another thing is they always change what MVP means every year. The best player on the best team, the most valuable player, it's the definition in the NBA terms is just all around wild, and it's just like, it's just all really confusing the way the NBA meta, you know, changes things year in, year out. My definition of MVP is the most valuable player to your team. Now look at the Bucks were the 1st seed that year, but I'm telling you right now, the 2023 year, if you remove Giannis from that team is not the 1st seed. They're probably like the 6th seed. Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, first option hoops. No hate to Chris Middleton whatsoever, but we all saw with Drew Holiday and a first option, he is another one of the reasons why I feel like the Bucks kind of sold some of the championships. 2021, I give him props, but 2022 and 2023, I do not give him props. There was clearly something wrong there. But yes, Giannis Antetokounmpo is truly an underrated player in today's NBA, and it needs to be talked about more. Like I said, I'm gonna make a video coming out in a few days about all the Bucks offseason moves and why I think this is gonna go ahead and help Giannis and the Bucks, because honestly, they made some nice moves for the things that they were able to do, because they weren't able to do a lot. But if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe very much. Those are my like little breakdowns of like everything that's happened to the Bucks and why I believe Giannis is underrated and why he isn't talked about. So if you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one with the next video explaining the offseason moves.